Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a meeting of the Mahwah Democratic Club and its Mahwah Board of Education Candidates Forum. My name is Ralph Monaco, Program Co-Chair for the club. Prior to beginning, I want to turn to Vicki Gallo to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Vicki, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The structure for tonight's program is a brief introduction of all 5 candidates, followed by each candidate's presentation. Candidates will speak in alphabetical order. I will ask that you hold all questions until all candidates have spoken, allowing all sufficient time to make their presentations, because once questions start, they usually take on a life of their own. Sally Monahan, Mahwah Municipal Chair, will introduce the Q&A portion of tonight's program, as well as read a statement from one candidate, Jeffrey Lichtenheim, who was unable to attend due to a conflict in his schedule. Now, a word about decorum at tonight's meeting. Board of Education candidates are members of the community who volunteer their time and energy to serve the public. They deserve to be treated with respect, even if you disagree with their views. Components of this respect are avoidance of applauding, cheering, or any other act that would not align with the decorum that are a hallmark of our club's meetings. Listen to what the candidates have to say. This shows that you respect them and their opinions. The Q&A portion of our meeting is the time to challenge positions in a thoughtful and respectful way. We are not out to demonize anyone, but hear their opinions about our ultimate concern, that is our students. Thank you very much. Brett Copeland, a resident of Mahwah for 13 years, father of 2, both Mahwah students. He has served 4 years as a member of the Mahwah Board of Education and served on the Mahwah Schools Foundation liaison for 2 years. He has served on various committees during that period: Instructional and Curriculum, Special Education Committee, Technology and Transportation, as well as several other committees. His involvement at the schools: 12 years at George Washington, Joyce Kilmer, Ramapo Ridge, and Mahwah High School. He has held every position on the executive board, is currently co-president at Ramapo Ridge and Mahwah High School. For the past 7 years, he has been president of the Township of Mahwah Youth Sports Boosters and coaches basketball and soccer teams. Current member of the Township of Mahwah Board of Adjustments, a small business owner, has graduated from Muhlenberg College with a degree in Business and Economics. He's co-host of the Mahwah Experience podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things Mahwah.
Thanks for the plug.
Richard De Silva. Rick De Silva is a lifelong Mahwah resident and a product of the Mahwah school system, graduating from Mahwah High School in 1993. After high school, he attended Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in marketing in 1997 and worked for Toyota Motor Sales USA for 6 years before moving back to Mahwah in 2003 to rejoin the family business. Along with other family members, Rick owns several dealerships, among them Liberty Hyundai in Mahwah. He currently serves on the executive board of the New Jersey Coalition of Auto Retailers, as well as the board of directors of the National Automobile Dealers Association. In 2021, he was awarded the Time Magazine Dealer of the Year Award in recognition of his achievements and areas of community service and contributions to the retail auto industry. Rick has served on the Mahwah Board of Education in 2012 when he was appointed to a vacant seat and has been re-elected to 3 subsequent terms. Rick's father, Rick Sr., also served on the Board of Education from 1995 to 2002. Rick is married with 3 daughters. 2 of them are currently juniors at Mahwah High School, and one who graduated last year and is currently pursuing a degree in Allied Health at the University of Tampa. Janine T. Jansen. Janine moved to Mahwah 9 years ago with her husband, Dr. Brett Jansen. They have 3 children in the Mahwah schools. She currently actively volunteers as a youth sports coach, a trustee with the Mahwah Schools Foundation, and a nonprofit board advisor. She has 20 years of human resources diversity experience in finance, law, and pharmaceuticals supporting business leaders. Her areas of expertise include diversity, talent, recruitment, HR strategy, and employment engagement. She was recently featured as a contributing author for the book Latinas Rising Up in HR. Her educational accomplishments include a Master of Science in Urban Policy and Management from the New School, a graduate certificate from the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and a Bachelor of Arts in English Communication and Political Science from Emmanuel College. Danielle Ryan. Danielle Ryan has been a Mahwah resident for more than 10 years. Danielle and her husband, Matt, have 3 children. After college, Danielle worked as a 911 dispatcher for Bergen County before starting her career as a law enforcement officer with the Bergen County Sheriff's Office, first on patrol and then finishing her career as a crime scenes investigator. Now retired, Danielle has now decided to continue her history of public service as a member of the Mahwah Board of Education. In July of 2021, she started attending Board of Education meetings when her son was about to enter kindergarten, and now wishes to take this opportunity to serve the community in this new capacity. Michelle Salzman. Michelle is a native of Bergen County and has lived in Mahwah since 2010. She grew up in Upper Saddle River, attending Upper Saddle River K through 8 public schools, and then Northern Highlands in Allendale. She went on to earn a BA in History in College of the Holy Cross in Massachusetts. After graduating, she worked for a large bank in their mortgage division. She was involved in marketing, training, and project management for 7 years until her first child was born, after which she decided to be a full-time mom. She's now a mom of 4. Her oldest daughter is a 2023 graduate of Mahwah High School and recently began her freshman year. Her second daughter is a sophomore at Mahwah High School. Her youngest are twin boys who are currently in 5th grade at Joyce Kilmer. She has a high regard for the Mahwah schools as a mother of 2, great teacher for over 25 years at Commodore Perry in Lenape Meadows. After corporate life, she worked part-time and freelanced in various capacities, including retail, proofreading, recruiting, and marketing. She was active HSO volunteer, donating time in numerous ways. She has an ongoing invested interest in ensuring her schools provide an education that is focused on academics without disruption and consistently involves parents in every aspect of their children's academic and emotional development. Please welcome all of our candidates to tonight's presentation. Thank you all very much for coming, and now I'm going to turn the podium over. Each candidate will give a brief presentation. And as I said, I'm going to ask you to hold questions until after everyone speaks, because once questions stop, they don't stop. So, Brett, the floor is yours.
Very good. Yep. Everyone hear me? Into it, okay. Never been told I can't be heard. Good evening, and thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Democrat Club for hosting us tonight, giving us this opportunity. 12 years ago, when my daughter was getting ready to enter kindergarten at GW, I was invited to a walkathon meeting, and the first question I had was, what's a walkathon? My wife had grown up in Mahwah, and she was trying to explain to me what a walkathon was, but it's evolved over the years, and I got sucked in pretty quick. From that meeting, I saw what a small group of dedicated volunteers can accomplish for our students and for our children here in town, and I dedicated my volunteering to that cause, to the kids of this community. As Ralph mentioned, I am a dedicated volunteer in the community. I served as a member of the BOE for 4 years. I've held every single position on the HSO. I'm currently the co-president at the Ridge and at the high school. I currently serve as the president of the Youth Sports Boosters. We manage all youth sports in town. I think there's about 16 different sports now, and we have hundreds of kids that come through our programs. And I'm currently a member of the zoning board. My motivation to be on the BOE is very simple. I want to ensure that every child in town has access to an excellent education that equips them with the skills and knowledge they need to be successful in whatever they end up doing after high school. Excuse me. My commitment as a candidate goes well beyond words. It's commitment to 1, innovation and preparedness. I'll push for innovative teaching methods, technology integration, and forward-looking policies that give our students the skills they need to succeed. 2, budget responsibility. I will advocate for a balanced, transparent budget that prioritizes student needs and educational excellence while being mindful of all of our tax dollars. 3, empowering our teachers. I'm dedicated to supporting and empowering our educators with the resources and professional development that they deserve. 4, equitable opportunities. Every student deserves an equal opportunity to succeed regardless of their background and abilities or circumstances. This doesn't mean equal outcomes. I'm committed to ensuring that every Mahwah student has access to resources, technology, and programs that values individualism, high standards, and a fair process. And then 5, parent and community engagement. My community-centric approach recognizes that education is a partnership between schools, parents, and the community. I will always be committed to fostering open lines of communication, transparency, and collaboration between all stakeholders. I want to emphasize that my desire and decision to run, again, is not about me. It's all about our children and our students, our teachers, our community. I'm again coming into this with a selfless approach without any kind of agenda other than to do what's right for the students. I humbly ask for your support and vote. Please vote column 6. Thank you.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Da Silva. I am a lifelong Mahwah resident and a product of the Mahwah school system, starting in Mrs. Brotherton's kindergarten class at Commodore Perry in 1980 and graduating from Mahwah High School in 1993. As Ralph said, my wife and I have 3 daughters. Our oldest graduated from Mahwah last year and is currently pursuing a degree in allied health down at the University of Tampa, and her sisters are currently juniors at Mahwah High School. 11 years ago, I was appointed to fill a vacancy on the school board and have been elected to 3 subsequent terms. For the past 11 years, my focus has been on making sure that the conditions exist for great things to happen in the classroom. I've served on the negotiations committee where I've been involved in contract negotiations that enable our district to attract and retain the best and brightest. I've served on the finance and facilities committee where I've been involved in projects like a comprehensive engineering audit of our facilities, enabling the district to formulate a proactive maintenance schedule for our buildings to ensure a comfortable learning environment for our students and the teachers, and working with the township on paving projects, which save the town money. I've served on the policy committee where we've undertaken the task of perpetually reviewing the policies and regulations that provide the structure of the district's operations. In football, you learn blocking and tackling before you learn the double reverse. These jobs are the blocking and tackling duties of the school board. They're not exciting, but they're essential to creating an environment where kids can realize their full potential. During the interview process for my initial appointment, I was asked why I wanted to be on the school board. And my answer back then was simple. When I went away to college, I found that my experiences in this district had prepared me well for life after Mahwah, and I wanted to perpetuate that for my children. That answer still holds true. I'm just a dad who wants to make sure that the kids in Mahwah have the same solid foundation for their future that I did, whether that future includes college, the military, trade school, or gainful employment. I'm happy to report that in speaking with my daughter, she navigates the beginning of her college career, that her experience has been similar to mine so far. Material that's new to many of her new classmates is familiar to her from her high school classes, and that's not just subject matter. That's things like safety protocols and how to use equipment in her biology and chemistry labs. In short, the foundation set by her education in Mahwah is serving her well. And that's as close to an agenda as I've got. My guiding principle is simple. Like Coach Carty used to ask, what's best for the kids? I'd like to thank the club for hosting this evening, and I look forward to learning more about my fellow candidates tonight. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. A little shorter than my colleagues here. Janine Ting Jansen. I moved here 9 years ago with my husband with the intent that we would raise our family here. My children are 9, 11, and 7. I have a boy, girl, and boy. Admittedly, we moved here attracted to the wonderful school system that we saw when we did our research, and we took careful notice of the community. I remember the first strategic plan meeting I went to, where we talked really deeply about the inclusiveness and the welcoming nature of all Mahwah residents, and that really appeals to me. As someone who stands before you, who is a third generation in the country, Mexican and Chinese on both sides of my family, I'm the first to go to college in my family. I value a college education. I value a public education being a product of that. I intend to have my children graduate from this school, and I remain concerned about issues that are coming up recently. And my commitment and my stance is that I want to continue to keep our schools amazing. I coach the youth sports because it's important to me. I grew up playing softball and volleyball. I played in college. I played an instrument. These are all important pieces that come up to the puzzle. In my day job, I'm an HR and diversity leader in corporate America. What I find in the corporate workplace is the jobs are changing. They're changing very frequently. The skills that we need are changing. And I think our schools are on a path to prepare our students for that future, because we don't know what that holds. We know today what it looks like. We know the basics of what we need, but we need to constantly keep our teachers really confident on what they have in their back pocket in the classroom. We want them confident to teach our students, to really give them that sense to explore, to innovate. And what I see in the workplace is when we have a sense of belonging, when people feel welcomed in the classroom, when their teachers feel confident, we have greater innovation, we deliver better results, and our students thrive. In a recent presentation, what we saw with the BOE was about those results that we're getting. And what we see is our kids are excelling. For me personally, my child he landed in a gifted and talented program. He's in 6th grade. And that was a wonderful surprise and celebration for us. And we talk about all the time what he needs to achieve to continue to keep there, to be competitive, because excellence is important. When we talk about the things that we have to accomplish as a family and what we need to do to continue moving, that's important to us. So we see those values echoed in the classroom, and I want to continue to see those values. I want to partner with the teachers to continue to take in their curriculum, their lesson plans, and ultimately give them that confidence. I want to continue transparency with the parents, with the families, because together we can take those inputs and achieve greater outcomes together. I want our kids to graduate with the choices they want. As the daughter of a New York City fireman, and he was also a corrections officer, those roles are also very important to me, being a college graduate. And all of the options that we have before our children continue to be important. We want them to have choices. We want them to have the skills, security, is what I call it in the workplace, to choose their career path. So I stand before you as someone who moved here 9 years ago. The schools are so important to me. My lived experience is indeed different from many. But I'm proud of that, and I think with what I bring to the table is a difference that can really help us drive to the future, support our kids, and make sure that they are exactly where they need to be when they graduate with whatever path they choose. So I'm really thrilled to be up here with our wonderful candidates, and I'm really here for any questions to really explain why this is so important to me. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this event. This is my first time running for public office, my second time being at a Meet the Candidates night, and I'm very excited to be here. As mentioned earlier, my name is Danielle Ryan. I'm a lifelong resident of Bergen County, and I've been in Mahwah for over the last decade. I'm happy to call Mahwah home, and as a mother of 3 young children and a taxpayer, I have a vested interest in the continued excellence of Mahwah schools and the responsible spending of our school-allocated tax dollars. I'm also a retired law enforcement officer. In choosing that field, I was answering a call to public service, which has driven me to this moment, continuing my public service, and running for Mahwah's Board of Education to contribute to Mahwah's bright future. So how did I get here? Like many parents, I had a lot of concerns and questions about how school life would look for my son, who is set to begin public school in Mahwah in the fall of 2021. That summer, I was compelled to attend my first board meeting over the possibility of forced masking on Mahwah students and staff. In the end, the decision was made by the governor, and despite choosing to send our son to an alternate learning environment and keeping my other 2 children home from preschool during that time, My passion for the Board of Education matters continued to grow as a concerned community member. Over the year where he wasn't in Mahwah Public Schools, I continued attending the meetings, voicing my concerns, and speaking up for those who were afraid to do it on their own. It is very intimidating being up here now and coming out and speaking to a large group of people. A lot of people in the community over these last couple years would reach out to me either on Facebook or with a phone call and just let me know how they were feeling and let me know that they had my back on my concerns, but they just weren't comfortable getting up. And I completely get that. And maybe having that year where I wasn't in the school system, but I was still at those meetings, maybe not being in the system, it gave me a little confidence to voice those concerns. So with that, my ears and my heart has been open to the parents who spoke to me during those times. Over the years, I've taken those concerns that didn't affect me or my family directly because I care about the community at large, not just my small circle. My career in law enforcement taught me a great deal about working together with others to achieve the objective and working with so many different people. Ultimately, my goal is to ensure the very best for all of Mahwah students, not just educationally, but their health and safety is paramount as well. I promise to use my votes on the board to do what's in the best interest of our children. Again, their overall well-being being what's most important to me. Their educational, Mahwah has a great education system. We confidently have our children in the schools now. And I hope to be part of the board to be able to continue with that excellence moving forward. Thank you.
Break it up by it. Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Salzman. As Rob said, I've lived in Mahwah since 2010. I have 4 children. 3 of them are still in the Mahwah schools and 1 is a recent graduate and is in North Carolina. I am running for the Board of Education because I would like to play a part in continuing the progress our district has made in so many notable areas. I also like to help influence the trajectory of future decisions, ensuring that topics are adequately discussed and residents feel they have an elected representative in place to speak on behalf as the board deliberates and eventually votes on key issues that affect all students and stakeholders. Much like Danielle said, during the COVID years, I had several parents reach out to me regarding their concerns regarding masking and some of the policies that were happening at school. I still consider myself to be a point of contact for several parents, and people are not comfortable speaking in a large forum like this, and I understand that because it can be very intimidating. So I would like to be able to use that voice to try to represent some of the people in town who don't feel that they are being heard currently. As a parent and resident over the last decade, I've had the privilege of seeing our schools make remarkable progress. From facilities and innovation and technology and course offerings, there's been tremendous growth. However, over recent years, I've also noticed a shift in some areas that I find slightly concerning. We seem to have gone a little bit too far in certain areas, including social and emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender studies, and several other topics that have seemed to monopolize a great deal of our time and money, and also a great deal of mental energy, particularly for our students. While these items are important, I believe that we have invested enough at this point, and we have achieved what we need to achieve, and it's time to move a little bit further to another direction while keeping in place what we have already accomplished. For example, time in an elementary class discussing the difference between equality and equity could be much better spent learning multiplication facts. My boys just turned 11. They have no idea what equity and equality meant and lost 15 minutes out of math class trying to have this taught to them. That, to me, is not an appropriate use of time. Discipline also has been replaced by discussion. Talking out things has replaced action, often in situations where disciplinary action is the only remedy, as continued negotiations with a child has not yielded acceptable results. As a culture as a whole, a culture which has severely influenced school decision makers across the country, we are consumed with the student's level of comfort at all times, which provides a carte blanche invitation to express oneself on any given day, often changing by the day, and demanding those around follow suit and support. We are being asked at this point not just to respect those decisions, but also support them. There's a big difference between those two things. You can respect something, but not always support it all day, all the time. The comfort of a few has often overridden the comfort of the many, thereby placing a burden on our students who simply want to go to school, learn, make friends, participate in activities, and go home. Often I see those in power making a value judgment about whose happiness is more important and who gets to feel comfortable and accepted at school, who has their opinions and beliefs openly respected while others are told to be quiet. Distractions, such as lack of discipline and accountability, and catering to some extreme individual needs, and disruptions from internal and external factors all detract from quality, uninterrupted learning. That is my focus. I would like our children to be able to go to school and learn without having all of the distractions around them that are consuming their day. We all hear kids can't sit still. Has anyone actually taught them to sit still or encouraged that behavior during the many hours they are in school? Or do we spend the day going from one distraction to the next, stopping class to deal with an unaddressed ongoing discipline issue, never training the mind and body to focus for extended periods of time? This seems an unfair task to place not only on our students, but also our teachers. Mahwah teachers are faced each day with ensuring our kids not only meet but exceed expectations. They are held to very high standards. These standards are difficult to achieve in an often suboptimal environment fraught with disruptions and curriculum that detracts from, not encourages, the mastery of essential skills. As Mr. Monaco said, my mother was a teacher in the Mahwah schools for 25 years. She taught at Lenape Meadows and Commodore Perry. So I watched a teacher struggle as time went on with having problems in her classroom that her hands were tied to address over the years. Of utmost concern to me is policy 5756, which I know is in the news right now, so I figured I would bring it up, which in effect removes the parent from the school-child relationship. There's much to be said about this policy, and I understand it is a very complicated issue with strong feelings on either side. But we must ask ourselves as a community, why would we want anyone to enact such a policy and come between a parent and their minor child during their most formative years? Why would anyone want to disrupt that relationship between the people who care for their child each day and that child who may be going through a tough time or having legitimate questions regarding their body and their place in this world? One may say that not all homes are loving, and that is very true, but it's quite a leap for an administrator to be able to determine which homes are and which homes aren't. If an administrator calls home after several days of tardiness and missed homework, what if the administrator subjects the child to an abusive parent unknowingly? It is simply impossible to know what is going on in another person's home. At that point, do we just stop calling home? Do we stop reaching out to parents out of an abundance of caution? I don't think that's appropriate, and I should hope we do not adopt a policy such as that. As a parent to now 3 minor children, no institution should ever take away my right to know and be involved in decisions that affect their day, their well-being, or their future. In closing, my Board of Education platform simply represents my beliefs and my goals. Restore academics, reduce distracted learning, and restore parents' rights. Thank you for your time and support and for hosting this meeting.
Good evening. I'm Sally Monahan, the Democratic Municipal Chair for Mahwah, and we're delighted to have such a large crowd here tonight, and we thank you for coming out and participating in our program. I'll begin by reading a statement from Jeffrey Lichtenheim. Dear Mahwah Democratic Committee members, I am sorry I could not join you tonight. However, I look forward to meeting everyone in future gatherings and events. My name is Jeff Lichtenheim. My wife Jennifer and I have been residents of Mahwah for over 20 years. I have 2 children who came up through the Mahwah school system and are both now in high school. My daughter Mia is a proud Mahwah Thunderbird for both soccer and basketball. My professional career spans over 25 years, where I have held numerous informational technology positions for companies such as UBS, Suez Environment, Citrix Systems, and most recently, a Silicon Valley-based virtualization and cloud computing company called VMware, where I lead an incredible team of engineers. As for my academic background, I received a bachelor's degree in economics from New York University, a Master of Science degree in Information Systems from Stevens Institute of Technology, and I am currently pursuing a doctorate in socio-technical systems engineering at Stevens. My reason for pursuing this volunteer board role is simple. I would like to contribute to this incredible Mahwah community and leave our school system a little better as a result. I hope you will seriously consider my candidacy, as I strongly believe my background in business and technology will provide our school system with new insights and perspectives to ensure our most precious asset, our children, are well prepared for the complex digital world that lies ahead. I wish all the best to the other candidates this evening, and please feel free to ask them very difficult questions. Sincerely and respectfully, Jeff Lichtenheim. Next we're going to move to the question and answer period, where you, the audience, will take over and ask questions to the candidates. Sally Becker-Coda, our vice chair, will call on you. So please wait to be called on by Sally. That's part of the reason that you have a name tag on. And we ask that you stand, state your name, and then ask your question loudly enough to be heard. I will repeat it. We will be moving the microphone back and forth from the speakers, so they will use a microphone to answer. And I'll repeat the question using the microphone if there's any question, about what was said. So we ask everyone to remember that decorum and courtesy allows each of us to participate in a robust exchange of ideas in a respectful manner. We want to demonstrate tonight that we're excited to be together in person for an open and honest conversation about the value of public education and what constitutes the common good. A clarification that I'm not sure that people understand, because government is complicated. All Board of Ed elections are nonpartisan. They are not, in the state of New Jersey, there is no Democrat running, no Republican running, no Libertarian running. In some states, there are partisan elections, but not in New Jersey. I personally believe that we are all suffering collective trauma from the level of animosity common in our everyday political discourse, especially in social media. We seem to lack empathy for those with differing points of view. Tonight we're here to listen and learn. I'm grateful that the Board of Ed race is competitive again this year. I'm not sure the candidates would agree with me, but I believe that every citizen should vote to make their positions and ideas count by supporting candidates who articulate their own views. And the best way to get to the best policy is with an honest and open discussion and a clash of ideas. So, turning over to Sally Becker-Coda, who would be like to be the first person to ask a question?
My name is John Simpson. I have been a resident of Mahwah for 31 years, and although my children have completed their schooling before I moved to Mahwah, I do feel that I am very well contributed my taxes toward an excellent school system here. I would like to first of all thank the five of you for coming here to see the ideas that are being presented by the citizens of Mahwah. I'd like to address my question to all of you, and it's a little bit of the elephant in the room, although Ms. Altman has come closest to addressing it in her original comments. What is your opinion as to the meaning of parental rights in the context of your potential role and responsibility on the Board of Education? And I'd like to hear a comment from the five of you. Thank you.
I think everybody heard that clearly, so I'll start by handing the microphone to Michelle.
Hi, thank you for your question. The role of parental rights is the entire role. I believe that up until a child turns over the age of 18, that the parent should have a say of everything that goes on throughout the day, in whether it's at school or at home. And therefore, everything that goes on in that school affects the child. So if other things are occurring that is a detriment, that has to be addressed. And it can be addressed in numerous ways, whether it's disciplinary, policy. There's many ways that it can, but a parent should have a say. If a student is going through an issue, whether it be a social issue, a gender issue, an academic issue, a call should be made home to discuss that issue. It doesn't if it's severe enough that it can't be addressed at school, the parent should be involved at every level. I do not believe they should be cut out of the process. Does that answer, or would you like more detail?
Up to you, you're the one.
I can go back, policy 5756 does attempt to cut the parent out of the process in that one particular area of gender and several other areas, which I think is why it's created such a hostile environment, because people do feel very strongly and very differently about it, about whether the safety of the child is paramount. And like I said, it is very difficult to tell what is going on in someone's home. So you're asking the school to make a value judgment about someone's home life and if they can support the needs of the child. And that's a difficult judgment call to make. If you err on the side of including the parent, you're always deferring to the parent, which, as having minor children, that is the proper way to go, in my opinion.
Hi, thank you for your question. I'm a strong advocate for parental rights. What that means to me, similarly, is that the parents should be involved. If there's anything at the school that they feel needs to be addressed, I don't think parents should be kept in the dark. As children get older, high school, there's going to be some kind of independence, but any major issues, I believe the parents should be involved in. Beyond just issues, even at the educational level, a student's going to be more successful if they have home involvement. If you have a student that's parents aren't reading with them. My son, for instance, is in second grade now, and he has to do 20 minutes of reading a day. I could trust him to go sit in the corner and read for 20 minutes on his own, but I know that he's going to get more from it with my involvement. Paying attention to what words he's missing, what he's mispronouncing, things like that. So I just think that for a successful student, that starts in the home. And it would be great for teachers to want their families involved academically, and then again, like I said, with disciplinary or bigger issues, to definitely bring the parents in and let them be involved in successfully navigating that.
I'm going to come at this a little differently it's a partnership. I, as a parent, send my child to school. I have trust in the schools. As an example, I know that there was some incidents with my son, and he had to go to the social worker at their school. And the conversations didn't come back to me necessarily immediately. There was a day delay, if you will. But the outcomes, when the information did come to me, I was quite happy with those outcomes. There's a lot of research that when you're having a moment where you're at risk, or you're scared, or something's not going your way, you are more likely to go to a peer than your parent. And I think that's something to consider when we have, the kids have phones, right? They have YouTube, it's unfiltered. The conversations they have with their friends are unfiltered. So all this information is coming in. And having someone in the school to act as an additional trusted resource, in addition to your parent, is important. And I think when you develop these networks of trust, and constantly revisit the conversation with your child every day, that's really important. So we focus every night at the dinner table having conversations about what went well during the day, what didn't go well. Let's have that conversation. And that's usually where the things that they're not feeling well about come up. But we do have to pull it out of them. So I do want to make sure that we have lots of different resources available to the kids to have those conversations, because I don't always trust their friends, the information they get. And they are more likely. And our at-risk youth, they do go to their friends. They do go to YouTube. They do go to these resources that, I tell my kid, I'm like, you can't trust everything you Google. You just can't. So to me, there's the parental right piece is that I want to have a partnership. I want to have the transparency in what they're being taught. When it comes to 5756, we looked at the memos together of what the age-appropriate curriculum was when the updates came out. We watched the videos together, and we had that conversation because I wanted to have that conversation with them first. And I think this is where the partnership with the schools is tantamount. So I want to promote continued transparency. I want to make sure that parents have access to the information that they need to navigate those conversations, because that is your parent right, to have the navigating conversation with your child. So I want to continue to see that good partnership work and have that open dialogue, because that input that comes in from the kids, from us as parents, and from the teachers and the administrators is critical to the success of the whole child.
I'm not sure there's a whole lot left to say between the three. So, the meaning of parental rights means a lot of different things, a lot of different people in different situations, right? Broadly, I think it's the ability for parents to have a say in what's going on in their kids' lives. I don't see a reason where things should be held from parents, hidden from parents. I don't see that that's appropriate. If we're talking about something in a particular class, if the parent's not comfortable with what's being covered in the class, they should have the ability to opt out. That's not a problem. Parents absolutely need to be involved in what's going on with their kids, but that means that parents need to be involved in what's going on with their kids, right? That's not always easy. It's a lot of work. When we're talking about curriculum and things like that, it's all available. But man, it takes a lot of time if you really want to dig in and to really know and really understand. It's a commitment, and being a parent is a commitment. So it's kind of it's a two-sided thing. It's parental rights carries with them the responsibility of being involved with your kid, and that's that's broadly, I think that's where we're at.
Well, thanks. You took what I was going to say. Are we reading this? First and foremost, I've always been committed to upholding and protecting the rights of parents. It is a fundamental right for a parent to be involved in the decision-making of a child's education. We are, as parents, the first and most important educator in a child's life. Period, end of story. It doesn't stop within the house. As parents, we have a responsibility to be involved. We see it on social media almost every day. When do schools open up? Do we have this day off? Well, that's a parent who's not involved. And as a board member for 4 years, I was committed to opening up transparency in communication with our parents, creating new streams, getting information out differently. And if I'm reelected to the board, I'm going to continue doing that. Talking about 5756, this is a great example of Trenton writing a policy that was mandated down to the schools. It took the local rule out of it. It didn't allow districts to say, hey, how do we do this for Mahwah? How do we make this work for Mahwah? Quite honestly, I don't care how it works in Newark or in Trenton or in Ridgewood or in Wyckoff. How does it work in Mahwah? It cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's where the Mahwah Board of Ed, that's where the Mahwah professionals, that's where the Mahwah administration comes in to say, hey, how do we apply this and how do we make this work for Mahwah? What does it look like for the students that may not feel comfortable telling mom and dad about something? Okay, let's work through that. Let's understand why. It's not just, okay, we're not going to tell you. It's hey, what's going on? How can we help? How do we work through this with you and your parents? For the students that feel comfortable, okay, let's have that conversation with mom and dad. That's where we need to be with this, and that's where the parental rights come in. As Rick said, it does come with responsibilities. You have to be involved. The parents that are not involved are the ones that are, again, asking these questions on social media and not knowing what's going on. And a lot of times that's where we run into the issues. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was a very interesting conversation, and thank you for articulating your points. And John, thanks for that question. Sally, next questioner.
Okay, over there. Hi, I'm Roya. I'm new to Mahwah. I moved here a year ago. I have a son in the first grade at Lenape.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Oh, no problem. I'm usually pretty
Yeah,
loud.
speak up, please.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty loud, so okay. I'm new to Mahwah. I've been here for a year. I have a 6-year-old, first grade at Lenape. I know a few of you on the, I was going to say stand. It feels like you're on the stand, but on stage. So thank you for coming. But I have a question. So I understand hearing all of your points of views and understanding that it's a nonpartisan, right, decision you have to make. How will you make these votes and decisions, being if you were on the Board of Education, without using your own political viewpoint towards that? Because Mahwah is such a diverse, and I love that town. It's so diverse of so many different, such a wide demographic, different ethnicities, different cultural backgrounds, different political viewpoints. How can you prevent your political views and personal opinion not impact that vote? Because this vote applies to all children. So how do you do that?
Wow. I would like to rephrase it and see if I'm rephrasing it correctly. You're asking, how does an elected official act in the common good rather than impose their personal bias? Okay. Okay. And is this to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start at the other end. Is that fair? And then we'll start in the middle the next time. Okay, Brett.
Great. Thanks for the question. That's a good one. First of all, when it comes to education, I strongly believe politics has no place in politics. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. My way of approaching education the 4 years I was on the board was always putting the kids first. What makes sense for the kids? That's the only thing that I'm considering when I'm making a decision. It doesn't matter what I've watched on Fox News or watched on CNN or I read on Yahoo, if anyone still reads news on Yahoo. But it's not about me, and I've said that in my opening statement. I'm coming into this from a very selfless approach. It is all about the kids. It's what makes sense for the children of our district. So I think that's how I would approach it.
I'm so glad you asked this question, because one thing that I am most proud of for my 11 years on the board is how we have been able to keep politics out of the board, out of board business. When we're private citizens, it's our thoughts and our beliefs and our what we do is one thing, but when we're on the dais or when we're in a committee meeting or something like that, everybody checks their politics at the door. Because, like Brett said, politics has, unless you're in a political science class or social studies, politics has no place when we get into policy for when we get into schools. It's one of the reasons that I have been really strongly opposed to doing things like symbolic resolutions. Because you don't know who's coming in, it ends up to be a political statement, and if you do for one, you have to do for the other, and it becomes non-productive. During my time on the board, I've worked with people that I know are from both sides of the aisle, sometimes really far on both sides of the aisle. But when we're doing what we're doing as school board trustees, that stays outside. That doesn't play into the conversation. I shouldn't say that. It does play into the conversation, but in a respectful, appropriate way. Because when you're debating things from different perspectives, that's where progress happens. So you have to have the give and take. You have to have the conversation. You need to have the different viewpoints. But at the end of the day, it's not a political decision. It's, we're generally able to largely come to consensus on the right thing for the kids. Because in this position, what we're doing, why we do it, that's why we do it, is to do what's right for the kids. Not what's right for the party, not what's right for who's going to get elected or who's running next time, or to score points or keep points away from the other side, or anything that happens in Trenton and Washington that's just ridiculous. That's not what we have here, and I'm very proud of that record for the last 11 years.
Thanks. I think this is a really important point because the role here is for us to partner together to find the best solution for the kids, and we're all showing up for the kids, right? And I think when it comes down to it is when we have divergent or different opinions, that brings richness to the conversation where we can get to the best solution. And I think there's something I really value is listening and hearing and what I call like a feedback loop, right? We try something, we hear the feedback. Is it going well? What can we do to improve? And sometimes when we have multiple solutions on the table and we're all looking at it from different angles, that's where we get to the best solution. And at the end of the day, I want our kids to be proud of the legacy we leave on that table with the decisions we make. We want it to be repeatable, and we don't want to have to revisit each problem every time, right? That takes away time from focusing on priorities that we need to get to. So ultimately, we have to have conversations that together we come to the best solution with the differences of opinion. And the politics don't have a space at the table, right? It's your lived experience, your experience in the workplace, as a parent, through your children. That all comes in, and that's important to getting to the best solution. So I think of it as if our kids can be proud of the decisions we make in that room to benefit them, that their legacy, and to all of you who are taxpayers in this town, whether you have kids in the school or not, if you can be proud of those end results, and we come back to it and revisit and see what other feedback we have, that's working for us. So to me, that's how I would approach this position, is how do we partner together to get to the best solutions.
Hi, Maria. My answer can be very simple. I'll just repeat. Once you enter that room, once you're making your vote, the bottom line is the kids. What's best for our kids? What's best for Mahwah schools? And I don't think politics has anything to do with that. And politics don't belong in the classroom. Growing up, I would never have known any of my teachers what their views of anything were. And I think that's great, and that's how things should be. So I would just enter that with the idea of the priorities, the children, and my views outside of the education system doesn't have any effect on my voting.
Hi, thank you. So politics don't shape my beliefs. They're my beliefs. They've always been that way. It's irrespective of party. It's just how I feel. My question is, though, as you said, this is a very diverse town. There's like 26,000 people, I think, in this town. So when you have that many people, and then therefore that many children in a district, you have to ensure, when you're saying it's all about the kids, it is all about the kids. You can't have all your policies only focus on one segment of kids. And I feel that that's kind of where we've leaned a little bit over the years, is that we are focusing very highly on one aspect of our population, and other kids are now starting to feel a little more uncomfortable in the classroom. So when you're talking about all kids and putting kids first, that means all kids. It doesn't just mean part of the kids. And as Danielle was saying, we didn't know our teachers' political leanings or how they felt growing up. I thought that was the proper way to go. I feel that in this environment now, it's a little more acceptable to divulge that in the classroom, which can sometimes make things a little more uncomfortable. So if those things are being shared in the classrooms, they're by definition going to spill over to the children, to the Board of Ed, to the parents. So we have to watch what's going on inside the schools currently and what is acceptable now inside the schools that wasn't previously, and ask ourselves if that is contributing to the divisive environment that we are now living in.
Okay. Sally, our next question.
Hi, my name is Neil Walensky. I've lived in Mahwah now for 12 years. I didn't raise my kids here, okay? But this is personal for me, it's important for me, okay? Assuming parents know, okay, how do you feel about kids in high school identifying themselves as LGBTQ and having a support group for them in high school?
Did everyone hear that question?
No.
Okay, I'll put it to the middle now.
Sally, you have to repeat the question.
So the question was, how do we feel about children identifying as LGBTQ in the high school and having a group around them to support them?
Yes, that was the,
Assuming their parents are aware.
Assuming that parents are aware.
Yes, that's your question, right, Neil? Does everybody understand the question? Okay, all right.
Okay, go ahead. I think there's a lot we know now where the kids that are most at risk are the individuals who may be identifying here. They're the most at risk. Their suicide rates are up. They're going to be children you know. They're going to be children that are friends with your kids, and we have families that look different in this community. So when we have support for anyone who needs that, that's critical to the whole child, and that contributes to their excellence and success in the school district. So with full transparency that we have groups available, I think that's very powerful. I think it's very powerful for a small amount of kids, but indicating having that available, and also lets other kids know that, hey, whatever your difference is, you are welcome here, you are supported, and you can bring that full authentic self is what I call it, to school, and you can thrive here. So if we want that welcoming environment with full transparency in the community and with parents, I think that can be extremely valuable, just as we would offer a child extra time on a test if they have an IEP, if they need something translated, just any other support that they need. This is something that's coming up, and how we approach that is absolutely critical to the success of any child who needs that. Nobody.
Pass it to Dick.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. I think that having a support group at the high school, I'm not sure if that's something that's currently available, but I think that's fantastic. I think that children that are part of the LGBTQ community are at-risk students. That's just a scientific fact in terms of suicide rates, things like that. So I think having a support group would be of paramount in helping them navigate the waters and being more comfortable with themselves in bringing their most authentic self out to the world, whether not just in the school but everywhere. And I think it would be great if that support group was open to all students, so that the friends that are straight would be able to be participating in that as well, and get everybody involved in supporting that group of children.
Hello. As I said, I had a daughter who went through 4 years and a daughter who's there now. She's a sophomore, and there is the LGBTQ club. I think that there's also a variety of programs that provide an environment for them to socialize together and are also open to other students to attend as their friends, so that they can, be a support group for that. I will say also that the schools have an amazing mental health staff, whether it be psychologists, SEL, coaches, resources. They do a really good job of reaching out to kids, not just in the LGBTQ community, but any child who's experiencing an emotional trauma of any sort. I feel that they are a first line of contact for those kids to reach out to, and I'm very comfortable knowing that we have a staff that's equipped to deal with any child who's in need.
Okay, you want to pass it down?
Yeah, so like Michelle just said, there are several opportunities at the high school for kids who choose to share, where they're at in that journey of their self-discovery. I think all kids need to be supported where they need it and how they need it. Not everybody's the same. It's going to be different, a different experience for everyone. Some kids are good to go and they're confident where they're at. Some kids, maybe not so much. But there are several supports available in the district for kids that are, that are in this in that part of their development. There are some things that I think we need to be mindful of. The comfort of I don't like to see where accommodations are made for one person that make everyone else feel uncomfortable. I think that's something that we need to be careful of. For instance, let's say in a locker room where you have someone who is, physically one gender identifies as the other, they're more comfortable in, the locker room where they identify as. If that makes everybody else in the room uncomfortable, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I think we need to be respectful of everyone in the situation. But absolutely, the clubs, the support that exists in the high school is fantastic. Again, it's not just for LGBTQ kids; it's for their friends. Everybody is welcome, and it's actually a pretty cool thing to watch.
First and foremost, I think regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, every student needs to feel valued and respected in schools. Bottom line, I think support groups are a great start. I think providing professional development for our staff members are a great start, but it's never ended. We're not done with it. I think about a conversation I had with a friend whose daughter was starting high school, I guess 2 years ago. She's a sophomore now, and her daughter had, I don't know if it was recently, but she had come out of the closet as gay, and she had mentioned to her mom that, hey, I don't feel comfortable going to Mahwah High School. Maybe I want to go someplace else, maybe IHA or wherever. And her mom kind of pushed back and said, no, we want you to go to Mahwah House. she got me involved, and we started talking at the time I was on the board, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart to hear that story, to hear that, hey, this girl, this 8th grader, is having this dilemma in her head and her mind that, hey, I don't feel comfortable going to Mahwah High School, and that's not the high school I want for the kids of this community. So when I look at it, I don't want to think that just because we have a support group, we're done. We're not. We have to continue to grow. We have to continue to provide the supports, and that's through professional development with our staff. Our staff is, let's be honest, our staff is with our kids for a long time on the day, more than we see them. And they see what they're going through every day. They need to be able to identify the kids that are at risk. We talk about some of the kids that are at risk. They need to be able to identify those kids and understand what they're going through and have those transparent and open conversations, not just with them, but with also their parents.
Okay, thank you. Sally? Connie?
I'm Connie Byrne, and this question is primarily for Danielle and Michelle. So I was at the panel last week, and you both stated very clearly you felt that Mahwah spends too much time paying attention to small groups and not enough time to all the students. That being said, is this LGBTQ support group, which you just clearly said was a wonderful idea, the group you were referring to? And if not, who were you referring to?
Okay, yeah. So this is just to Danielle and Michelle.
Connie, do you care to elaborate? Because I don't.
You said,
Yes.
instead of focusing on, both of you said, I don't remember which one said exactly.
Well, that's what I wanted clarity on, because I
think
didn't say that.
Michelle probably said, we don't focus enough on academics, yet Mahwah is ranked 61 out of the thousands of schools in New Jersey. That report just came out today. And Michelle, you said, we're spending all this time on small groups of students. We should be spending more time on academics. The academics speak for themselves. We have a very highly rated school district. We have a high graduation rate, a high college entrance rate, and yet you want to say academics is being diminished, when in fact the facts don't show that to be true. So explain to me, if you feel that time is being wasted on small groups of people, who that group is.
What I would like to say is that I believe that our academics should be undistracted. I should not have my daughter come home and say that there is a child sitting next to her who every single day, one day is a boy and one day is a girl and one day shows up like a snake. That's a distraction to their learning and it makes them uncomfortable. So if people can thrive academically in that environment, I guess that's a good thing. But to me, that is not the role of the school. The role of the school is not to cater to everyone's individual needs all day long. Once they get home at 3 o'clock, if they would like to express themselves as an animal or as a transitioning person, I think that that's great. They're at home in their space with their parents and their friends, and they can do that. But while they're in school, I believe the focus should be on academics. Yes, we are very highly ranked. We have a great school district. We are providing excellent resources. But I feel that there's a lot of distractions in the classroom, including a complete lack of discipline. Because now we are talking about something that's more of a restorative justice where you can't actually discipline a child because they want to keep them in school. So these are just more things that are happening. And you asked about a small group. The small groups are, by definition, the minority. So I don't actually know how many people identify in the Mahwah schools as LGBTQ. I don't know how many identify as transitioning. All I know is that's less than the majority. Do I want those children ignored? Of course not. Do I want them respected? Of course. They should be in a safe environment. But we have kids who are so in flux and so needing of, I don't want to say attention because they're seeking attention, in need of services and help, that it can be a disruption to everyone around them. And I think that you go to school to learn, not to have to necessarily deal with children who are experiencing challenges that may be better dealt with at home or with a professional.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. You've spoken a lot about disruptions from behavior, yet you're speaking about parents' rights. Don't we always say that everything begins at home?
Yes.
Now, these children, perhaps there are legitimate reasons that they are struggling with their behavior, but the parent has some responsibility there as well.
Absolutely.
And if you can't discipline your child, and we all see it, we all see children who are out of control in the grocery store and wherever they are, and the parent does absolutely nothing. So you can't just say that the school, not that the school can fix that, or the school should not allow it, but if the parent allows it, I mean, your example, the child comes as various different animals. Well, you know, as a parent, I'm not so sure that I would condone that. You ever see Sebastian Maniscalco and his whole little routine about the kid that comes to school as a giraffe or something? You know, the parents have a responsibility. And the school is fighting with some of the parents who are not taking the responsibility, which you want them to have even more interaction in, you know, in dealing with these children and the teachers and controlling the
I agree with you,
So
actually.
that's,
No, I agree with you. I believe the school.
I have another question, but I'll put something else.
The school should be pushing back more, which goes to what we were just talking about, the policies and what is allowed in the school. The school needs to make the determination over what they're going to tolerate and not tolerate. This goes all the way down from dress code to behavior across the board. When you call home, if the parent doesn't respond, you don't get 3, 4, 5, 6 strikes. Okay, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you have to nip this in the bud. It has nothing to do with a marginalized group. It has to do with running an effective school system so that you don't have kids running amok with no consequences. That's the problem we have. We don't have consequences that are followed through on. We talk a lot, which is nice in the beginning. But we get to a point where you have to stop talking, you have to do something. The school has to call home, and that parent has to take responsibility for that child. That child is under 18. And that's the parent's role. And if that child has to stay home 3 days on a suspension, then that parent has to stay home with them. If that means missing work, it means missing work. I see you shaking your head,
No,
Joe.
I don't know if
Can we let some, we gotta move along. That meeting wasn't video recorded, but I never mentioned a small group.
I
The only
think
thing.
it was Michelle.
Okay. Well, you directed it at both of us. The only thing I did mention was, and it's part of it's the little blurb next to my name on the ballot, is back to basics. I think that with 2020 continuing to affect so many students, both socially and in the classroom, I just want to get test scores back up. Mahwah has fantastic schools across the entire state. Test scores have dropped, and Mahwah is not. Mahwah test scores have dropped as well. So I just want to focus on getting the students back to where they needed to be. I think there was a lot of learning loss, and that's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Thank you. Ralph and I would like to suggest that we have 1 or 2 more questions from independent people. The candidates would like to make a short closing statement, and then we will break up formally, and you could speak to the candidates individually. Everyone's been a wonderful audience, been very patient, but it's a lot to sit, and these conversations have been extremely intense tonight. So, Sally?
I'd like to go back to the definition of parental rights. And my question is, there in the state of Florida, Texas, Arkansas, at least in Florida, there have been over 350 books that parents requested be taken out of public school libraries because they have explicit sexual content or whatever they're uncomfortable with. What I'd like to know, and I'd like all of you to answer because that's been working out great, how do you feel about just preventing your child from reading a book that you're uncomfortable with versus taking it out of the library completely, so that if I want my child to be able to read that book, like for example the Diary of Anne Frank or Romeo and Juliet, that my child would be able to get that book without having to go to Barnes & Noble to get it.
Okay, so this is about, to everyone, about policies about banning books. Is that, okay. All right, so we'll start with Michelle.
Yes. My answer is pretty quick. I believe that there's a large difference between the Mahwah Public Library and our school libraries. There's a big difference. So the public library in town, I think, should have every book under the sun. It doesn't matter what it is. You go in and you check out what you want. Like you said, everything should be available. When you're in a school, take a K through 3, for example, I believe that it should be a little more age appropriate, because sometimes those children are just literally pulling things off the shelf because it's got a fun cover. They don't know what they're looking at. So if they're not able to make a value judgment on their own due to their age, and their parents not there to make the value judgment for them, then I believe we have to have a little more care in the actual schools. So am I in favor of book banning? No. Definitely not at any public library in any state or city. In the schools, I believe it should be regulated to be age appropriate. That's my answer.
So with the book banning, I believe that certain books, of course, would be appropriate in the high school that aren't appropriate in the lower grades. I think that if a book is of a very sexually graphic book, which I know are those are in the headlines, that shouldn't necessarily be a book that you must read through the class. It could be available to students, but I don't think that it should be forced if it's a topic that's not appropriate. Even at the high school level, there are certain books that aren't appropriate, and likewise in the lower grades, just making sure that the library is age appropriate. I believe I'm sure that is the case in outside of high school. You're not going to be able to get those books, in Lenape. But I do think that they could take books that are extremely graphic and just make those not like a book on the list that you must read in order to complete that, like English AT or something like that.
I'm against book banning. I want to give the teachers the confidence. Oh, sorry. I want to give the teachers the confidence to continue to pick the books they need for their lesson plans. What we do as a board is we support the superintendent, assistant superintendent, with their curriculum, because they are the experts. The teachers then drive the lesson plans. They pick the books. I was quite pleased as a parent to receive a note home from my son asking the appropriateness and level of books he can check out. I gladly signed it and sent it back. But I'm satisfied with that level of intervention that gives me a say in the books that he can check out. And I want to continue to empower the teachers to do what they do best. I think things have been working. I think what they're doing in the other states where they're using AI to identify the terms in the books and then make a decision on what's allowed, I think we don't need to fix what isn't broken. And I think this is very concerning when we see these trends coming about.
So the book selection in all of our schools is curated by the librarians. By the way, the librarians are professionals. They're not just somebody who said, hey, we got an open spot, I can check out books. That's not how that happens. Librarians are professionals. And the books in each of the school libraries are curated to be age appropriate. Where we get into the middle school and certainly to the high school, there's a lot more, latitude on what that means, right? The professional librarians also, when a kid maybe tries to check out something that, maybe the librarian is looking at it saying, this might not be that appropriate for that kid, there's some guidance there to be had as well. When it comes to taking books off, making them not available because a parent or a group of parents is uncomfortable with a book, I don't think it's appropriate because, there are books, for instance, two of my daughters, I'm not going to mention the title because we don't need to get into the whole thing, but two of my daughters they both were in honors English, and they read one of the books that's pretty controversial. It is a meaty book. There's a lot to it, and the teacher that teaches that book is a professional. It's not her first year. They know what they're doing. They've taught it before. They've gone through that process with these kids, and they know what's okay, what's not, how to guide the conversation in a productive way and not let it get out of control. Just because a parent is not comfortable with something, you need to trust the parent or the teachers. You need to trust the kids because maybe it's something that that I might be uncomfortable with, but my kid can handle it. They're going to grow from that from that process. And having something taken away from my kid because somebody else is uncomfortable with it and not give them that opportunity, I don't think is appropriate.
Beth, I'm going to break your question down. Oh, jeez.
I'm sorry. In a situation, in that situation where a parent is uncomfortable, they can always opt out, and the kid is given a different book to read. So there's not anything that's forced. If it's not something that you're comfortable with, you can opt out. You have another opportunity. So I want to make that clear.
So you done? Like I was saying, Beth, I'm going to break it down into two parts. First, book banning. I'm totally, utterly against book banning. There's no place for that. I don't see the need. I don't see why we would ever want to do that. I think we need to focus on the age appropriateness of a book. Are we going to put War and Peace or The Diary of Anne Frank, in your example, in a kindergarten library? No. It doesn't make sense. Who would do that? But we also need to have books available to the appropriate age student that challenge them, that challenges their thought process, that allows them to develop critical thinking skills, that allows them to think about difficult topics. And that's where our professionals come in, like Rick mentioned. What are those books? What do those books look like? This also goes into parental rights. You had mentioned parental rights as well. We need to have, and I believe we do, have a transparent process so parents understand what their children are reading. Again, you talk about partnership with parents. This is a great example of that. We need to allow our parents, they need to know what their students are reading and what that looks like. What does that include? What is the discussion points? Who's teaching it? I think that's an important part as well. So instead of looking at book banning, like I said, we need to look at the age appropriateness of a book, and then from the parental rights, I think, again, this goes back to the idea of partnering with the parents and ensuring that they are involved in the process.
As they say, you'll have the opportunity to speak to the candidates individually.
It's not really a question, it's in terms of the book banning. Go ahead. The book banning and everything, it just puts me right back in mind of when sex education came into the school. It's the same fight that's going on. This one wants out, so we can't have the class. Take it back, take a look at what happened in the past, and see how this one goes. Because I think it's not a big deal. And then one other thing, I grew up in the times of Little Black Sambo. You ever heard of it? It was the first book I ever heard of it was banned because the little boy in it was Indian. Try to find it and read it. I gave it my copy away.
You know what, we had a question in the back. Who's had your hand up for a while, so I'll take her.
Well, thank you, everybody. This was great.
Your name?
Cecilia Lee. I wish I would have been in the other debate that you guys had earlier. And I would follow you in the next one that you have. But with that, can you list, this is a question for all of you.
Sally will repeat it.
Can you list your top 3 goals if you were an elected official, how you plan on achieving it, and what are your KPIs or your measure of success?
Oh, okay, now stand up because I may not get this. So you want it to everyone, their top 3 goals when they get on the Board of Ed. Number 2 is
how they will achieve it.
How you will achieve it, and what was the third?
Measure of success.
Okay, yeah. What is your measure of success for your goal? That sounds like a doctoral thesis it's a great way to end, we'll start. The final piece was, how do you measure the goal success that you're, what did you say, KPI or something? Okay, key performance indicators.
I just had to say it out loud.
Okay.
Talking about the same thing.
Some of us are retired and don't have to keep up with all this lingo anymore. Okay, so we'll have Rick start with this.
I'm going to need a couple of
All right, Rick needs a couple of minutes. All right. Well, all right, so Janine looks like she's ready for this. And then, as I say, this is our last question. And then we'll break and you can chit-chat and talk to them individually, finish coffee, and, okay, Janine.
So I'll say this really quickly, but it kind of leans into our closing statement, so apologies if it's repetitive. I want to continue to attract and retain the best teachers. So that comes to great professional development, keeping them confident in the lesson. The indicator for that of success is we reduce attrition. Right? So when we have teachers in the classroom that are confident, that are here, and they're getting that development, they will stay. They will stay and contribute to excellence. When it comes to The continued partnership and transparency, that's another key focus for me, is that transparency. And we can measure that through parental surveys, student surveys, and hearing the feedback all the time on how we're doing with that. So the communication is an opportunity that's come up in several meetings and is part of the strategic plan. So that's really well laid out and something I want to continue having that conversation, because there is a lot of opportunity. Not everyone's on social, they get their information differently, and I think that's a key piece. So that piece, it's part of the plan, and we want to continue having that conversation. As far as the third one, academic excellence, I want to continue to have great communication on what that looks like. We have the many, many tests that are coming forward, and I think those measurements will continue to drive us on how we're doing. We have continued advanced classes. We continue to get the kids most in need, and I think we're driving that. Those results are showing in our rankings. So when we talk about the distraction of SEL or the safety pieces, what we're seeing is that the curriculum changes are working, and they're getting to the kids most in need. And one of the last presentations showed that the kids who have English as a second language, kids who are diverse, are thriving. So that is an indicator that I would write home on, that I would demonstrate in any meeting to demonstrate what solutions we're looking for. So academics, transparency and communication, and recruiting and retaining the very best teachers so that they want to stay here. Sorry, I don't know.
Yes, whoever's got it. Okay, send it in. Michelle's ready.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
The first thing would be to invest in our. The first thing would be to invest in our schools in an appropriate way. We are very blessed with abundant funds, so we have the ability to make a real difference for our students and our infrastructure and our facilities. The second thing is to focus on all children. Everyone deserves to be comfortable. Just because a child doesn't show a need doesn't mean they don't have one. So we need to be mindful of all the children in our district. Possibly they have a need that they're not expressing. So focusing on everyone's comfort level and restore discipline, accountability, and high expectations. How would I achieve that? Would be through negotiation, persuasive argument, and real data. Possibly a return to more facts versus feelings. And a measure of success is if it's implemented or not. If it's not implemented, then it's not successful.
I'll go next. First one would be I would very much want to have community involvement. Over these last couple of years, going to the regular Board of Education meetings is very low turnout. It's usually me and a few other people. Yeah, we're together. But then I've also been to when the Board of Education hosts the town hall meetings, and then it's a room like this, and the room's packed, and people are there, and it's not just a couple of parents. It's all different walks of life. It's just people that are grandparents, people that don't have kids in the school and aren't grandparents, but they're taxpayers and they want to see or have a say in where their money goes. So I think that's really important, and it gets everybody involved. And it's great being in a room like this and seeing the town caring about not just your own student, but all students. And next would be working with the union to attract the best that we can possibly have. For some reason, I'm not, and I don't know why, but my kids have had a couple of different vice principals at Lenape. I'm not sure why they're leaving, but this year going back to school, they were devastated that Ms. Edwards wasn't going to be there because they loved her. Loved seeing her every morning, and not to say that the new vice principal isn't excellent as well, but just for kids, having consistency is key. They're in that routine. They like having the same thing day in, day out. It makes their lives easier. And then finally, as I mentioned before, my back to basics, improving test scores. And I'm not saying that our scores are awful or anything. We have great schools. But just getting our students back to where they were and beyond, getting scores higher than they've ever been. We have amazing different resources and listening, being at the meetings and seeing all the different technology and opportunities for students, internships, externships. That's just going to improve the overall success of our children moving forward, and not just in high school, but college and beyond.
Okay, so the first thing, and I kind of talked about this a little bit last week, is in terms of facilities. Remember, I'm the guy who, I'm on the blocking and tackling committee, so So the facilities, over the past decade, we've built a new elementary school. We've added on to the middle school and to Joyce Kilmer to accommodate the size of our population. And we haven't had the opportunity to do the same for the high school. So I think there are some things that that we need to address at the high school, and this is actually something that we started working on a couple of years ago. But then that thing called COVID kind of slammed the brakes on everything. This is, when we get into talking about the size of the gymnasium and the size of the cafeteria and the auditorium not being big enough to accommodate the entire, school population for an event. Those are things that are certainly beneficial, but those are things that go beyond the scope of the scope and our ability to pay out of our capital reserve, budget. So in that case, we'd probably be talking about a referendum to fund some of these, some badly needed expansions. I guess right-sizing the high school would be one of those things. There are things at each building that really should be done. I think the high school deserves some love. The rest of our schools have been, expanded in the past, and it's a little more comfortable. High school is still a little tight. So that's one of them. Our district blueprint we did 3 years ago now. So I think we're 3 years into the 5-year blueprint, and it's coming up that we're going to have to revisit. And for those who participated last time, we had a bunch of meetings where we invited the community to come in, and just on different topics. What are we feeling? What do you think? What are you looking for? What would you like to see? Really, where should we be focusing our efforts? And we turned that into a 5-year plan. Obviously, COVID in the middle, we had to adopt some of the things that were in that plan to fit, the changing goals. But that's something that's coming up that we're going to have to revisit and redo. I think it was successful the last time. And obviously we're not done with it. We have 2 more years of it. But I think that's definitely something that we need to do again, just to invite the community to really get that that outside the outside perspective. And third, for me, it's I kind of said in my opening that my thing is doing the background stuff so that the conditions exist for kids to do well, right? And as boring as it sounds, keep the roofs from leaking. When we talk about the facility audit, that was a big project, but that really allows us to forecast our needs and not have to get a call from a teacher that, oh my God, the ceiling's leaking, I need to displace my class, find someplace else for them to be. It's disruptive, it's expensive to try and do things on the fly like that as opposed to being proactive. It doesn't sound like fun, and it's a really big job, but keeping our physical, our facilities in good shape so that we don't have those issues, I think is vital. And again, just keeping the board in the background. I don't think that, I hate when, I love public participation at meetings, but when it gets to where things are just, people just unhappy and yelling at each other, and there's, that negative energy, I think that's, I think that we should be able to kind of keep that to a minimum and really, be respectful. Keep the board, and I like being the background guy, right? I think that's where where we need to be. So and lastly, to continue the success that we have. We talk about learning loss during COVID. Yeah, everybody's scores went down because you know what? It was a terrible time trying to adapt on the fly to okay, so now you can't have kids in the classroom anymore. Figure out how to do it remotely. You know what? Teachers didn't learn when they went to school to learn how to teach. They didn't learn to do that. They had to figure it out in the space of 2 weeks. Was it ideal? No. Did Mahwah do significantly better than a lot of other districts? Hell yes, we did. We absolutely did. And that was partnership between between the MEA, our administration, central office, the board, we did what we could do to make sure that teachers had what they need to do the best that they could. That said, again, it was not an optimal, situation. There was learning loss. Over the last year, we have taken steps to, there are a lot of things that we've done to identify that, not just on the school level, not just on the grade level, not just the classroom level, down to the individual student level, where we can actually, figure out where kids are and who needs this particular extra help, who's doing okay and can be pushed a little harder, right down to that individualization, so that we can do what we can to pick up that learning loss. Unfortunately, the little kids who, lose the communication with, the masks on and they can't see your face, that's really difficult to overcome. But there are things that, that can be done, things that we are doing. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. And that really just, that needs to stay in the forefront.
You can keep going. I'm still taking notes. All right, so number one would be to ensure all our students have the right resources, and also to increase opportunities through the Pathways programs. Look into adding different life skills opportunities like culinary arts, auto mechanics. Also look to add more extracurricular activities such as like an e-gaming program for those that may be interested in that. I actually sat through a presentation at the school boards a couple of years ago about e-gaming, and it absolutely blew my mind. Number two would be to continue growing our facilities and transportation programs, continue to look at them, continue to audit them at every turn of the way. We started that process 2 years ago when we started the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee that I was the chairperson for, and we started looking at what transportation looked like in this town, and it is unbelievably complicated. It was an eye-opening for me, understanding what the state requires us to do and what we can do here in Mahwah. There's a huge gap there, and we need to continue working through that. And the facilities, as Rick mentioned, the audit that we did a couple years ago with Land Associates was eye-opening, not just at the high school, but we also need to look at GW and Betsy Ross and understand what their needs are at those schools as well. If you've ever been into Betsy Ross's multipurpose room, I don't know if it's a multi-purpose room or what it is, but the floor is more like a disco. Yeah, all-purpose room. That's better. So we need to look at those facilities and understand what those needs are and what the community needs. Third is to continue to build communication, build community. What does that mean? That means building the community from within. Understanding what our staff needs, understanding what our community as a whole needs, understanding what our parents, but also not ignoring the students. A lot of times we talk about what the parents want, what the community wants. Well, what about the students? I, for one, go home every day. My kid comes home, I'll come home from work, I get an earful. Dad, this isn't working. This sucks. Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? We need to hear their voices. We need to understand what they're seeing because they're living these policies. They're living these programs that we're putting in place. So as Board of Ed members, I think it's very important that we hear their voices as well, and we can't ignore them. So how do we achieve that? It's working with the administration, because we need to understand that the Board of Ed is there to make sure that the district is run well, not to run the district. And that's what our role is. Our role is to kind of help them through that process, let them have different points of view, but also letting them understand what's a priority for our community. But also on the budget side, we haven't really touched on the budget that much tonight. When you look at the role of the Board of Ed, ensuring that we have the proper budget and the proper money allocated for the different programs is incredibly important role of what we do as a Board of Ed member. So we need to do a deep dive. We need to understand where the money is going, who's using it, who's spending it, what's it being spent on. And every meeting, it may be boring, but I can tell you I've sat through many meetings and I've read through many meeting packets where I've gone through every single check. I've looked at every check and I've questioned it. Hey, why does this, I think it was a mouse, a computer mouse, was like $500. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, what? They had a reason. There was a student who had special needs who needed a special mouse that cost $500. Okay, we're spending the money where we need to spend it. But that's the role of the board. That's the role of the board members, to ask those questions, understanding why that mouse costs $500. So, and from the performance indicators, I think what we need to look at is not just where these kids are going to college. I think we put too much of a focus on what colleges they're going to, four-year universities. Who's going to the military? Who's going to trade schools? Who's going out to the workforce? But also going back 4 years, who's staying in Mahwah? And why are they staying in Mahwah? Why are they picking Mahwah over Bosco or IHA or any of the other private parochial schools that may be out there? We need to understand that. And as we see those numbers go up, I think that's a great performance indicator that we're doing something right. Because ultimately, as a board member, I want to keep our kids here in Mahwah. I don't want them to go to Bosco or to IHA or some other school because they're doing something that we're not doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I will thank the audience member for that question because it ends up being a good closing statement since we're running out of time. So the first thing I want to do is thank the candidates for showing up tonight. I very much appreciate it. I want to thank the members of the audience. We have a very nice showing tonight. Now it's up to us. You've heard the candidates. Please don't forget to vote. The ballot.
They can vote for 3.
Yes, they can vote for 3 candidates.
They may not all know.
Yes, and the back of the ballot, I believe, is where the voting is. Is it the front this year? It's in the front, I didn't see it. In the front of the ballot, okay. A lot of times that was it. Okay. Once again, thank you very much to our candidates. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. Have a good evening.